It's as strong as a spell. I'll never tell. Yeah, I like you, that's for sure.
Hi guys, welcome back to XMLX. Every once in a while, I do videos where I share the stories of other ex-Mormons who have left the church. A lot of times those stories are shorter, and so I will take like 5 or 6 of them and make a video where I just share all of them. But today I'm going to share just one story that's a little bit longer. When I first left the church, listening to stories of other people who had left was really good for me for processing those big emotions and deconstructing my faith, and also for just reaching out and seeing that I had a community and there were other people who understood what I was going through. This story in particular that I'm going to share also had some things in it that as I was reading through it, I was able to relate to. So I'm hoping that it'll be the same for you guys. So without any further ado, here is a Mormon deconversion story sent in by a viewer. Despite being blessed as a baby, I didn't join the Mormon church until I was 12 years old. I joined because I believed that I had seen the devil's hand in my life. What happened was I had watched a documentary on the History Channel about Satan that I thought was disturbing. When I told my parents about it, they took me to 2 different churches, a Catholic church and a Mormon one. A Catholic church because my father was a Roman Catholic from Germany, and a Mormon church because my mom was a fairly active Mormon from Ohio. I chose to join the Mormon church because I thought it was cool compared to the Catholic church. Not that it was, but it was unique to me because I had spent most of my childhood going to a Catholic church. Despite this, my parents supported my decision 100%, and in October of 2012, I was baptized and confirmed to a ward in Flagstaff, Arizona. From that time until I was 19, I was the most active member of my family. I became a deacon a month after I was baptized, then a teacher at 14, and finally a priest at 16. When I was 16, I was sent to a boarding school in central Utah due to academic struggles relating to Asperger's syndrome. The family that ran the school were all devout Mormons like me, so at first I was excited. Almost from the moment I walked in, the headmaster and his wife had practically adopted me as their son. I felt more at home with them than I did with my own parents. I was transferred into their ward and blessed the sacrament in their church as a priest. I went to all the activities for youth, firesides, read my scriptures, bore my testimony, talked in church, etc. I was loved by everyone in my ward, and I loved them all back. This is something that I think that you'll probably notice if you listen to a lot of Mormon stories. A lot of us that were the very most faithful have the hardest time after we leave because your whole world feels like it's crashing down. And I think that's an important note because a lot of Mormons assume that people who leave the church do so because they're not devout enough. They don't practice their faith. They don't have enough faith. And a lot of the times that just simply is not the case. When I was close to graduating at 18 and a half, I eventually had to make the announcement that I was leaving to go home with my parents again. When I did so in a testimony meeting, I cried my eyes out as I stood up there trying to express my gratitude. At the end of that meeting, almost everyone, including many of the primary children who I had grown close to and loved like younger siblings, came up to me with tears in their eyes to thank me and bid me farewell. Giving a testimony where you announce that you're leaving and having everybody cry is something I could relate to because I did something similar a few years back when I was moving out of our town. I was giving a lesson in Relief Society, and at the end of it I bore my testimony and talked about how I was leaving, and you know, it's an obvious tearjerker. Everybody that loves you is gonna cry about it, and it makes it feel like the spirit is really, really strong. So I got you on that one. A couple weeks later, I was the valedictorian in my graduating class and moved out. As I bid farewell to my headmaster and his wife, we cried on each other's shoulders. A couple of months after I moved back in with my family, after they relocated to Idaho, I went back down to spend a couple of weeks with my headmaster while my parents went to Chile. Of course, everybody was happy to see me, and for those 2 weeks I was reunited with my boarding school and ward families. When I returned home, I received news that I'd gotten accepted into Idaho State University. I was thrilled. In January of 2019, I started attending, even though I was already attending classes at the LDS Institute of Religion on campus after coming home. When I was 19, I tried praying one night for an answer as to whether or not the Book of Mormon was true. I prayed for almost 30 minutes waiting for an answer. I didn't get anything. No burning of the bosom, no nothing. This is when I started to question my faith. When I first started questioning the church and was finding out a whole bunch of information that I never knew before, it was the first time I'd ever really questioned in my life. And I remember sitting down to pray and just praying harder than I ever had in my life to get something that would help me know that the church was true. And not getting anything in that situation is really, really heartbreaking, especially when you've devoted years and years of your life to this religion. I then started coming across more information about the church and its past that made me start to doubt it even more. I also had a friend from Flagstaff who was raised a devout Mormon to more of an extent than I was. After a traumatic episode in his life, he left the church and started sharing the information he found with me. In between this time and the outbreak of COVID-19, I was looking into the teachings of symbolic Satanist leaders like Anton LaVey and Lucien Greaves. I got really into it too. I bought all of LaVey's books, had a sigil of Baphomet banner that I hung from my window at my dorm, wore satanic jewelry, had special shirts, etc. I even registered to become a member of the Satanic Temple, of which I am a part of today. This would all come into play later. For those of you who don't know, the Satanic Temple doesn't believe in a literal Satan. They don't worship Satan. They don't believe in anything supernatural. It is secular. I'm probably going to do a video about that in the future, but just for context, this isn't somebody who's worshiping Satan. By the time I was 20, I was inactive in the church, and then in the summer of 2020, one of my transgender friends from my college took his own life. He was raised in a highly conservative Mormon family, so you can imagine the pain he himself went through. I will be honest, when I was active in the church, I was anti-LGBTQ myself, so I felt guilty knowing that I used to share the views with people who renounced him. I've been there. It's a very, very painful feeling. After that, I made my deteriorating opinion about the church known on Facebook. Some of my friends, including my headmaster, defended the church, telling me not to believe everything I read. A couple of months later, I had an altercation with my parents. I had failed out of college due to anxiety and had begun developing issues with self-esteem. After a particular night when I had a meltdown, my parents decided that I needed help with my life and becoming self-sufficient. My father chose to send me back down to my former school with my headmaster, despite the fact that my godmother in Billings, Montana, my hometown, had offered and pressed for him to send me to her instead. It's worth noting that my father was troubled by me leaving the church and wanted me to find faith in the church again. And since my godmother was not religious but my headmaster was, he didn't offer me the choice of my godfather or my headmaster to help me. My headmaster was made aware of me trying to leave the church by my father, so the morning after I arrived, he immediately started drilling me about it. He brought up his near-death experiences and the belief that he had seen God. You could tell he was borderline desperate to keep me from officially leaving the church, and as time passed, he became more frustrated. He was supposed to be helping me become financially independent like he said he would, but for the next 3 months, I was subjected to nothing but criticism because I chose to leave the church, my fairly feminine personality, slight immaturity, and because I had started dating a woman who I met in Idaho with piercings, tattoos, and a shaved head. It's also worth noting that throughout this time, I was helping him with labor at his ranch. One night, I was so downtrodden that I called my older sister in the middle of the night crying because of something my headmaster said to me. I said I was contemplating suicide and, for the first time in my life, I sincerely meant it. She said that she also thinks my parents should have sent me to my godmother. Eventually, after my 21st birthday, things reached a peak. After my headmaster discovered that I was talking to other students about what I had learned about the church that made me decide to leave, he said that he was just going to send me home and that I was a lost cause. My headmaster called me a piece of shit, said that I was immoral, said he wanted to kick my ass, that nothing awaited me but a jail cell with nothing to have sex with but a, quote, black man named Joe. Your headmaster's a racist. That I don't deserve the people that love me because I was a backstabber, and that when he would write a book about his school, he would refer to me in it as his greatest success turned greatest disappointment. They also mentioned that my parents had told them that they had disowned me, which was a lie, but it felt that way in the moment. And while he and his wife were berating me, one of the students discovered my books about symbolic Satanism in my backpack. And when they brought them down, they chucked them at me as if they were trying to stone me. They then gave me 30 minutes to pack anything I had with me and gave me money for a motel for one night. I am so sorry that this happened to you. I was able to relate to this because of experiences I've had, not with my family, but with my in-laws. Just the way that, you know, they started out acting like, oh, they're gonna help and, you know, we're here for you and we care about you. And, you know, in the beginning, they're just gonna do their best to try to get you to return. But once they realize that you're not giving them what they want and you're not doing what they want, they suddenly turn really, really vicious and nasty and say really, really terrible things. I recognized this in my own life because my in-laws are also Mormon, and it was interesting to me to see this sort of parallel. I feel like when somebody's in this position where, you know, they are so convinced they're right and they want to convince somebody else of that same thing, you know, like you said, they are desperate and they're going to say whatever it takes. And when it's not working, they just lose it. They start lashing out. They start saying anything and everything. Like they think that by beating you down and making you absolutely hate yourself, that's somehow going to get you to agree with them. It's just terrible. It's truly a terrible way to treat somebody. On our way to the motel, he told me that my chances of being successful and happy with my life again were 1 in 150 billion. He basically said that I was screwed and that my life was all but ruined. When he finally dropped me off at the motel, the last thing he told me was, "Have fun looking at those you love in the rear view mirror of your life." That night at the hotel, I called my girlfriend, crying and begging for help. She told me that everything was going to be fine and that she and her parents were driving all the way down from Idaho Falls to central Utah to get me in the morning. Afterwards, my parents called me and asked if I was okay. When they did, I broke down and screamed about how much I hated the LDS Church for making enemies out of people who I loved like my family. And even though I was told that they had disowned me now, they reassured me that they didn't and they never would. Good for your parents. The next morning, I moved in with my girlfriend and her parents. During that time span of when I left Utah and now, May 2022, I have retaken control of my life in ways I could not be dissatisfied with. My girlfriend is now my fiance. We have our own place, our own car. I have a steady job, guitars and music that I take pride in, a dog and 3 cats that I love more than anything, except for my fiance, and a baby on the way. But most of all, we're very pleased and content with our lives, and knowing that I proved my headmaster wrong is one of the most empowering things ever. I was also taught that there was no true happiness outside of the church, but I am beyond happier with my life now than I ever was in the church. Same. And I was taught the same thing. And I also agree, it's so empowering because you feel like, and you're like directly told that if you ever leave the church, you're never going to be happy because you cannot have true joy. And leaving the church is really, really scary because you're convinced that that was the truth. You're convinced there is no happiness outside of the church. And how am I going to raise a family? And how am I going to do this? How am I going to hold down a job? Like, it's terrifying. And then you do it. You conquer. And you realize that, wow, like, I am in control of my life. And my happiness doesn't rest on a religion. It's wonderful. So I'm really happy for you. Despite that, I still have episodes where I get angry at religion. I curse the church and swear my hatred for it because of what I experienced with my own personal hurt. But despite those times, I've made my peace with my past and only look forward to the future, which only gets brighter and brighter. I absolutely love it. And I absolutely agree. I mean, I've been out of the church for coming up on 4 years. And most of the time, I don't really think about it. It's funny because a lot of people assume that because I make content about this, because I, make all of this ex-Mormon content on YouTube and on TikTok, that it must be on my mind constantly. And the truth is, it's really not. I put the content on the internet and then I go on with my life. And so for the most part, I really don't think about the church all that much. But there are times where, maybe I'll learn something new about the church or hear a story from somebody like this where it gets to me. Like, for example, watching Under the Banner of Heaven, there were so many emotions that were brought up, not only because of the faith Christ has shown, but also because of seeing the way that they portrayed Mormons and having memories of my own childhood come up and the feelings that I had when I was baptized and all those sorts of things. And it can make me really angry at the church sometimes. So usually what I do is when I drive past a church building, I'll just do one of these out the side window. And honestly, it helps me feel a little bit better. And if it helps you feel better and it doesn't hurt anyone else, go for it. Thank you so much to this person who shared their story. It was relatable for me. I hope it was relatable for the viewers as well. And I'm just really glad that you're doing so much better and having a great life outside of the church. It really is possible, no matter what they tell you. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, be sure to subscribe. There are also ways to support the channel down in the description. And speaking of, thank you so much to my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys are the best. Special thank you to AA, Craig Call, Doug Davis, Mormonland, The Guiltiest Place on Earth, Jason Wilkins, Noble Monster Comics, Richard Kaner, Tans, and the Axmo Candle Co. for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. Remember to follow me on other social media if you want to see more content. If you want to share a story like this person did, send it to xmolex@gmail.com. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Never revealing no secrets you're keeping. These promises strong as a spell. I'll never tell. Yeah, I like you, that's for sure.